What are we to make of Jesus Christ? There is no halfway house, and there is no parallel in other religions. If you had gone to Buddha and asked him, "Are you the son of Brahma?" he would have said, "My son, you are still in the veil of illusion." If you had gone to Socrates and asked, "Are you Zeus?" he would have laughed at you. If you had gone to Mohammed and asked, "Are you Allah?" he would first have rent his clothes and then cut your head off. If you had asked Confucius, "Are you heaven?" I think he would have probably replied, "Remarks which are not in accordance with nature are in bad taste."
Hello everyone, this is Grace Philosophy here, and I wanted to share this video because this video is something special to me. It was one of the first videos I watched on my journey or came across, and there's a lot of interesting things he mentions in this that I want to talk about. One of them being what he just said. It's very true. If you went back in time and you talked to any religion at their highest, or the person who was the wisest per se, of the highest, none of them would have proclaimed what Jesus proclaimed. And later on in this, he also mentions how you doing that really doesn't set you up for a good life. And it's unbelievable, like how right and true that is.
Reprinted from Asking Them Questions, 3rd series, edited by Ronald Selby Wright, Oxford University Press, 1950, reproduced in Undeceptions, 1971, and now in God in the Dock, 1998. What are we to make of Jesus Christ? This is a question which has, in a sense, a frantically comic side. For the real question is not what are we to make of Christ, but what is he to make of us? The picture of a fly sitting deciding what it is going to make of an elephant has comic elements about it. But perhaps the questioner meant, what are we to make of him in the sense of, how are we to solve the historical problem set us by the recorded sayings and acts of this man?
Well, one thing on this point that I would love to bring up is the 12 disciples. Later on in this discussion, C.S. Lewis, mentions Jesus would have had to have been someone who was absolute mad or someone who's completely sane. It couldn't go, it has to be one way or the other, right? Well, one interesting thing on that is it's not just him. He had 12 disciples. And I feel like that is a big factor in it all because it's not just him. You would have to say these 12 were also insane. And I think it's fair to say that if one of them was not sane, they would, for lack of a better term, spill the beans. So, and not only that, most of them, all of them, wrote a gospel afterwards and have documentation and historical evident proof that most of the disciples died because of and believing in the resurrection, which is another topic that we are going to get into later on in this clip.
This problem is to reconcile two things. On the one hand, you have got the almost generally admitted depth and sanity of his moral teaching, which is not very seriously questioned even by those who are opposed to Christianity. In fact, I find when I am arguing with very anti-God people that they rather make a point of saying, "I am entirely in favor of the moral teaching of Christianity." And there seems to be a general agreement that, in the teaching of this man and of his immediate followers, moral truth is exhibited at its purest and best. It is not sloppy idealism. It is full of wisdom and shrewdness. The whole thing is realistic, fresh to the highest degree, the product of a sane mind. That is one phenomenon.
Yes, and this is a topic that I've been writing about for a little while now, and I'm going to share some of it. Some personal work that I've been doing on certain things, but morality. It's funny he mentions that, and we do know it to be true if you watch Jordan Peterson and other philosophers. Yeah, I guess you'd call him a philosopher. I would. And you listen to them and you hear things that they say, and you wonder, could morality be tied to Christianity, something like that? I want to push it to a different place. I would say that you would put morality is actually tied to the conscience. And I feel as if we, as humans, get our morality through the conscience. And I believe that the conscience is not a product of evolutionary effect. For an example, evolutionary effect would be something like, because we shave, we grow more hair, but over time we'll grow less, right? Another, excuse me, another example of this would be when you're laying in bed and you jerk or you feel like you're falling. That would be a product of evolutionary effect. Or that feeling of you just being on the edge and that you just fell over even though you didn't. And it's the same similar feeling. You jerk and you wake up. I would also call that a product of evolutionary effect, but not the conscience. Because if you truly think about it, if we didn't have the conscience back when we had the cavemen, we would not be here today. And even with it, we struggle and suffer.
The other phenomenon is the quite appalling nature of this man's theological remarks. You all know what I mean, and I want rather to stress the point that the appalling claim which this man seems to be making is not merely made at one moment of his career. There is, of course, the one moment which led to his execution, the moment at which the high priest said to him, "Who are you?" "I am the Anointed, the Son of the uncreated God, and you shall see me appearing at the end of all history as the judge of the universe." But that claim, in fact, does not rest on this one dramatic moment. When you look into his conversation, you will find this sort of claim running throughout the whole thing.
This reminds me of a conversation me and a friend of mine had. She asked me, does that make Jesus a demigod? And I thought about it for a minute, and my answer is no. It's something I don't think we ever conceived an idea of. How I would imagine it is like this. He was 100% human, but with the access or the knowledge to the divine, to the higher power, whatever you want to call it. So I believe he was 100% human and 100% divine. And it's something that's hard to conceive, but it's not a demigod. A demigod, a god and a human made love and had a baby. That's not what happened in Jesus' case. He magically created a baby inside of Mary that she gave birth to. His humanity comes from Mary, which, side note, I don't know how true this is, but I have heard in research that possibly Mary's bloodline is connected to David, which is quite interesting. It's a side note, but an interesting fact nonetheless.
For instance, he went about saying to people, "I forgive your sins." Now, it is quite natural for a man to forgive something you do to him. Thus, if somebody cheats me out of £5, it is quite possible and reasonable for me to say, "Well, I forgive him, we will say no more about it." What on earth would you say if somebody had done you out of £5, and I said, "That is all right, I forgive him"? Then there is a curious thing which seems to slip out almost by accident. On one occasion this man is sitting, looking down on Jerusalem from the hill above it, and suddenly in comes an extraordinary remark. "I keep on sending you prophets and wise men." Nobody comments on it. And yet, Quite suddenly, almost incidentally, he is claiming to be the power that all through the centuries is sending wise men and leaders into the world. Here is another curious remark. In almost every religion there are unpleasant observances like fasting. This man suddenly remarks one day, "No one need fast while I am here." Who is this man who remarks that his mere presence suspends all normal rules? Who is the person who can suddenly tell the school they can have a half-holiday? Sometimes the statements put forward the assumption that he, the speaker, is completely without sin or fault. This is always the attitude. You to whom I am talking are all sinners. And he never remotely suggests that this same reproach can be brought against him. He says again, "I am the begotten of the one God. Before Abraham was, I am." And remember what the words "I am" were in Hebrew. They were the name of God, which must not be spoken by any human being, the name which it was death to utter. Well, that is the other side. On the one side, clear, definite moral teaching. On the other, claims which, if not true, are those of a megalomaniac, compared with whom Hitler was the most sane and humble of men.
And anybody would agree with that Hitler was an absolutely insane, crazy individual. You gotta give respect where respect's due. The man was incredibly intelligent, but pure evil. And for that to exist, for evil to truly exist, and it does, and we'll get into that in another video, the opposite also must exist. And I do truly believe that. And also in the clip we just listened to, he further proved my point of Jesus being sane, or possibly insane. But when you bring in the factor of the 12 disciples and all the people who would gather and listen to him, and the ending result to his peaceful protest, it's, you could call it a coincidence. And what is a coincidence? A coincidence is something that happens, say, once in a blue moon, once in a while. Better example, when two things randomly line up with very little chance of doing so. But there's a quote that I love that says, if there's two coincidences in a row, the third is the start to evidence. So if we were to look at that with any type of seriousness, then it'd be quite obvious the pure level of coincidences throughout the universe for us to be here. The coincidences that line up with what Jesus said in the Bible and how it's a hyperlinked book and everything cross-references back to each other and to each other and back to each other. Are we not, by that very fact, breaking the definition of what a coincidence is by stacking those coincidences repeatedly on top of each other? We are destroying the meaning of the word itself while still using it. So what word do we use? And that will be the end of this one. We'll have a part 2 to the rest of the conversation and video of C.S. Lewis, What Are We to Make of Jesus Christ? And I hope to see you guys there. Thank you, and please like and subscribe, and I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Hope everyone has a good day.